Hi, and welcome to the Modern Persian Food podcast. We are food bloggers,
Bita Arabian,
and Bita Nazem Kelley, and we're here to share with you the rich flavors and fresh ingredients of Persian cooking and how to incorporate them into today's modern lifestyles.
We're excited to introduce you to the flavors, tastes, and techniques we use, and also our own cultural stories and perspectives growing up in the U.S. in a Persian family. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode number 78. I am with the lovely Bita, and we are excited to talk to you about vegetarian Persian food. This is a topic that we've had a lot of interest about, and we are excited to share with you some of the foods and vegetarian options for you and your friends to enjoy. Hi, Bita Jun. How's it going?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm excited to talk about this today because I feel like there's so many plant-based options that are naturally vegetarian in Persian cooking and that are often overlooked, and people don't necessarily realize there are a lot of Persian options that are completely vegetarian as it is. So let's get into it. So Bita Jun, when we talk about vegetarian Persian food, what comes to mind to you?
There are so many things from appetizers all the way down, soups, rices, main dishes that are vegetarian or that can be adjusted to be vegetarian. So Persian cuisine is loaded with beans and legumes and vegetables and herbs, eggs and nuts. These are high protein ingredients that are in our dishes. So if I were to start out with, for example, the appetizers, there are a variety that are just already vegetarian. The salads that I can think of, Salad Shirazi, it's basically, cucumber and tomato and onion citrus salad. We have Mast-o-khiar, our yogurt dip, which is fresh cucumbers chopped in yogurt with some mint. And of course, the variety of delicious eggplant dips that we have, like kashke badem jan, kashke badem jun. We have the eggplant dip, mirza qasemi. It's just so delicious. And one that I know that you really love, that we just talked about recently, salad olivier, can be converted to be vegetarian simply by omitting the chicken.
Yeah, that's great. To your point, Persian food is so rich in fresh ingredients and really healthy ingredients that there are a lot of options. Having a little meze platter of different appetizers is a great way to have Persian flavors and not have to worry about having any meat in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Our cheese platter, which is basically the feta cheese, fresh herbs and nuts, and along with some warm bread, is a beautiful way to start any meal.
Yeah, sabzi khordan. I love that so much. And you can always serve that alongside your main dishes as well. As we go into the next category of foods, like soups, so many of these soups, again, are so rich in beans and herbs and greens that you really don't even miss the meat at all. Like my favorite, khoreshts, is entirely actually all plant-based except for if you wanted to add any kashk or yogurt to it. The whole thing is just made with water and with all of the ingredients that requires no meat at all. Also, adasi, as some people call it, and that's just a lentil soup. That's delicious, and that doesn't have any meat broth if you don't want to use that. And also like supijo, that you definitely don't have to put chicken in supijo. So that's just some of the soups that don't have any meat in them. And I just wanted to say that, when we're talking about some of these dishes, if you wanted to go back and look at the very authentic recipe, some people will be like, they are dishes that have meat in them. But I think that when we're talking about how we can modify recipes and have that fit into our modern lifestyle, so we're making adjustments. So if you want to talk to someone about having like a very authentic recipe, they are going to say your supijo needs to have chicken in it. But I think in today's day and age, if you want to have an option that's not having any chicken in it, then I think that that's completely up to you to do that. So ashijo, supijo, and also the khoreshts and adasi are great vegetarian soups if you like to have that.
Mm-hmm. Another one that comes to mind for me in terms of an appetizer that we can stick up in the appetizer department is kuku sabzi. Kuku sabzi is so nutritious. It has the protein in the spinach if you use spinach, fresh herbs, eggs, and entirely vegetarian. There are many kinds of kuku as well. What are some other types of kuku?
Yeah, aside from kuku sabzi, which is kind of like my go-to kuku, there's kuku sibzamini. So you make the kuku with potato, and you can make it also with zucchini. And honestly, you can really make it with kind of any type of vegetable if you like. One of my favorites is actually making it with cauliflower. I'll first start off by roasting the cauliflower first, and then add the ingredients to it in a big mixing bowl, and then cook the kuku in a pan. You could also cook the kuku in the oven if you wanted to use a little bit less oil. And we have options of like actually putting them in little cupcake molds for little individual servings that you can have on a platter and share with friends in a fun way.
Yeah, I was a lucky recipient of your cauliflower kuku. So delicious one time when I got to have you over.
Yeah, that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Côtelette is a little patty that typically has meat in it, but I did want to call out that there is a version that I was introduced to by one of our previous guests, Nilu from Nilu Recipes, and she actually makes the côtelette with tofu. So I made that and I was super excited about that because you just grate the firm tofu after you've kind of pulled out some of the extra water and put the other ingredients in it, and then you can still pan fry them individually. Also, we had another guest, Cynthia, who would make her côtelette in the oven. So I think that those are fun ways that you can do côtelettes that you can have vegetarian as well.
Yeah, so the big category of rice, so rice being one of the staples of Persian cuisine, is of course, in and of itself, the rice dish is gluten-free, it's vegetarian, and it's so good in any form. Then our layered rices, many of them, you can adjust them and omit the meat. For example, the one that comes to mind most readily for me is the lentil and raisin or date layered rice, which is so delicious with warm cinnamon. And again, the lentils, the legumes, have a lot of protein. They're super nutritious. I like to make that as a vegetarian option if I'm having some friends over that don't eat meat. Another one that's really nutritious would be baghali polo, fava bean herb rice. You know, I haven't made this for a while, but I love the Persian tomato and potato rice my grandma used to make. Estambali polo. It doesn't have any meat in it. My husband loves albalu polo. And that is a rice that has cherries and, you know, there's a variety of spices that can be used. But that's another sweet and delicious, interesting rice with no meat.
Yeah. And then there's also kalam polo, which is made with cabbage and a bunch of different seasoning. And based on what region you're from, sometimes that has herbs in there as well.
Sabzi polo, that is often served for Nowruz with fish, but you can serve it solo.
Yeah.
It's just a rice with herbs, mainly dill, right?
Yes, mainly dill. The rices that we list do have ingredients that have protein in it, but if you did want an extra kick of protein, another trick is to actually put a fried egg on top of it. So that's actually like super cozy way to kind of eat rice sometimes. Instead of with meat, you actually put it with a fried egg on top, and I actually love that, and it's super cozy for me to like eat a meal like that.
Yeah, and I liked your point of in the start of the episode that these are not going to necessarily be super authentic tasting. For example, I have played with using meat substitutes, Beyond Meat or Incredible Burger kind of meat. In, for example, lubia polo, I have tried it in other dishes where you normally have meat. And
yes,
I know that there's actually some modern restaurants in the LA area that are starting to use them for kebab. So if you're used to the taste of meat or you just want to kind of go more plant-based, there are options, and I would encourage you just to experiment. I love the ideas of trying tofu and meat substitutes if you're into that, just trying to carry out the flavors as much as you can and knowing that that's not going to be what our ancient ancestors necessarily were preparing and serving, but it's going to be, I think, the wave of the future. And so personally, I'm ready to embrace it.
Yeah. And to your point, you know, I've used meat substitutes for lubia polo too. And honestly, like you really can't even tell the difference because it has like the same texture and there's other strong flavors. So that can segue into our next topic here about what tips and tricks can we give you guys to create more flavor in the vegetarian dishes if you're looking for that. So the lubia polo, for example, has a lot of tomato paste. And I think that adding tomato paste to your dishes will really bring some of that umami flavor that you may be missing without the meat. So tomato paste and actually caramelizing the tomato paste a little bit will bring more flavor out of it. Also, caramelizing onions when you're cooking. We start so many of the Persian dishes with piyaz dagh, which is the sauteing of onions and with a little bit of turmeric before you add the other ingredients. But when I'm cooking vegetarian, I really try to get a good color on the onions to really bring out all the flavor of the onion because it adds so much to the dish. I would say also seasoning properly, making sure you have enough salt will definitely make an impact on your dish. So try to make sure you have enough salt and seasoning. And to the soups and other dishes, you can always add vegetable stock instead of beef broth or anything like that, or just water. You can always just use a vegetable stock for a little additional flavor. My lentil soup recipe, actually, if I am making it completely vegetarian and vegan, I actually, instead of using water, I use carrot juice, because it just kind of adds like a little bit more flavor and a little bit more lusciousness to the broth. And if you want to give it a shot, I enjoy doing that.
How interesting. Yeah. And in the khoresht category, which would be our stews that go along with rice, sometimes what I'll do if I'm going to make like a khoresht karafs or the celery stew without meat, I will put artichoke, to your point of adding a vegetable or something to add some texture or a different flavor. And that really pairs nicely. I love khoresht karafs with artichoke. It's so delicious.
Absolutely. I personally want to experiment a little bit more, but also adding mushrooms to some of the khoreshts too. I have a friend who adds mushrooms to his khorma sabzi and loves it. So that's an area I want to look into personally a little bit more.
Yeah, use what you think tastes good. I mean, obviously you have to like mushrooms.
Yeah.
I love mushrooms, but I think it changes the flavor too much in certain dishes when folks will just put mushroom instead of meat. I don't love that. But yeah, I mean, if you like mushrooms, then you're probably going to like mushrooms in your khorma sabzi. And if you're okay with tofu, then, then you'll probably be cool with tofu in your reime or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. These khoresh also, they're so full of ingredients and such rich flavors as they are that, you don't even have to use meat in them. We've talked about how you can substitute different meats in different khoresh, and omitting meat is totally an option too if you don't want to have meat in any of the khoresh, really.
I'm sure our great grandmothers will forgive us. I have a memory of being on vacation. I will leave out where it was because I don't want to badmouth the vendor, because I thought she was doing beautiful things with food. Well, she had sort of like a food truck or a station. It was at a farmer's market, and she was doing vegetarian, actually vegan and vegetarian Persian food. And I happened to have been there with my husband's grandmother and my kids. So that was like my kid's great grandma. And I was obsessed with it. I was eating all the stuff. And then we passed it over to, we call her mommy, endearingly, the great grandma. And she took some bites and she's like, nah. This is
don't
not,
even talk
no,
about it.
This is not okay. Like, no. She was basically like, throw it in the garbage.
Yeah. As we evolve, as our palates evolve and our lifestyles guiding us to different items, it's an evolution of our tastes and flavors that we're accustomed to and that we want. And also maybe it's dietary restrictions and things that are influencing what we eat. I think that hopefully your husband's grandmother will forgive us as we make some modifications. But there are so many dishes that don't even have meat in it. So if you don't want to change the flavor of the authentic recipes, then definitely steer towards some of these other foods that naturally don't have any meat in them. So thank you so much for listening to this segment. Hopefully you guys have gotten some inspiration to make some Persian vegetarian foods for yourself and for your friends. And we are now to the Ask the Beats segment. So Bita Jun, we have a special Ask the Beats from Mr. Denemaki, writing from Iran. And he wanted to know, what do you serve when you have special guests? So why don't you go ahead and answer that question for him?
Oh, special guests. So, I really love a little Persian tea party. So I think that if I was to have special guests, what I would do is I would turn some tea on. I have a variety of herbal teas and Persian tea available. And then I'd pull out cookies and sweets. So right now I have some Yazdi cupcakes. I would offer that. And then I would go from there. That's what I would do. I'm a sweetsy person. How about you, Bita Jun?
I love actually having guests, and I love sharing Persian food with everybody. So if I had a special guest come over, I really want to serve a showstopper of a dish. I want to have something that's going to really have a presence on the table and a main focal point. And I think that if I had a special guest, I would either do a big tagine with a beautiful garnish on top of it and the crusty tahdig all around it. And going back to our topic of this episode, you actually make your tagine vegetarian.
I do. I have some right now.
Yeah, I think that would be a great showstopper of a dish, and that's really visually appealing. And also, then I would have all of the sides, like the sabzi khordan, and have some sort of yogurt or a Mast-o-khiar. And I love Salad Shirazi too, so it really brings freshness to the table. It also, I like to have like a little bit of Salad Shirazi, maybe a little bit of sabzi khordan, with each bite that I have of my rice. So I think that would be what I would serve if I had a special guest coming over.
I'm coming over.
Yeah, anytime. All right, Bita June, thank you so much for taking the time. And hopefully everyone got some good inspiration from this episode to make these vegetarian dishes. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast in whatever player that it is that you're listening in on, and so that you can get a new episode every single week. And if you want any of the resources that we talked about, we will link to our different recipes in the show notes section. So in the app player that you're in, if you just scroll down, you'll see all of our notes and links there. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Don't listen while you're hungry.
Yeah.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to the Modern Persian Food Podcast with Bita and Beata. Thanks for spending time with us. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider telling a friend or giving us a good rating. You can subscribe to our show for free on your favorite podcasting app, or find us online at modernpersianfood.com or on Instagram for the recipes and information we talked about today. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and see you next time.